Okay, I'm going to finish it up here. My name is Bill Walker. If you don't know, me llamo Guillermo. To our friends from south of the border, they're all out of the building. Oh, the set's still in. I use a few different rigs, and I used for a number of years, and that's the Looperlative that Ilya demonstrated earlier. And lately I've been using a rig that is, a couple of rigs. One is the Infinity Looper, which is just a hardware looper, and I use for gigs where I don't want to drag all the other armada around. And for people who, there's probably everybody savvy in here, but if I'm looking at a single looper or a two-track looper, I look for obviously things that are very important. Undo is a very important feature because you create a simple loop again. And so it's a fairly primitive yet good way of using it for compositional tools. So, and the other thing I use a lot is guit-boxing, like rubbing my strings and beating my instrument, stuff like that, to get sounds. So another feature that's imperative for me in a cheap looper, or let's just say a simpler looper, is half speed, because I use it to create rhythms, shaker type rhythms. In fact, I'll demonstrate one here with an actual brush. This is a product that was released about 10 years ago and failed miserably, the Strum brush. So what I do is I put my looper at half speed to record this, and then I bump it up to normal speed. The idea is to get a really cool syncopated thing that acts as an underpinning for the rest of your improvisation or whatever. And so when I bump it up to normal speed, it's going to be twice as fast. So there's my shaker, there's my kind of underpinning rhythm. And to this I might add just a drum, kind of a drum sound. I do this again with muting. Usually with on the bass pickup and just hitting the strings. And of course the snare is going to be me flicking the strings, also muted at various spots. There's reverb in the program. I won't turn it off right now, but here we go. Whoops. Okay, so remember when I said undo is an important feature? It's also good for boobies. The Infinity is you can start overdubbing and overdubbing and overdubbing and layering and layering and layering and layering and layering. And once you hit overdub, it will go right back to the thing if you haven't stopped and started overdubbing while you did that. So that's another cool way to build a piece at the end of the piece. but you can do upwards of a multiple of 4 or 6 of the original loop length. So that also allows some cool compositional things that you can do in that vein, just having 2 tracks to play with and dub in and out. What I noticed at first, because I found it kind of a little infuriating as a product, was that if you want everything to go right, you create a preset. You don't fill it with information other than how the amount of multiply is set up, whether or not both tracks are turned off at the same time. I keep them separate so I can dub them in and out. And those kinds of functionality things that you have to set. But once you do that and go to your preset, you're good as gold to kind of get going and playing with it. And it's a very, very clean machine with a lot of headroom, which is important because I think it can work very well, say, in the effects with a small mixer. Because I think it's got that kind of headroom. Hold on. The other rig is the one with all the bells and whistles that I use. That is actually a program called Mobius, and it's running within Live as a plugin within Live. I'm using some of the routing and MIDI connection things that Live is really good at doing, but I'm creating a first loop from Mobius, and that's creating my BPM or clock that I send to other things. Now, what do I mean by that? I just mean that I'll create a short loop, and it will make all my delays and echoes all sync up and be right in line. Let me find one to demonstrate this. I don't want to get too esoteric with this, but the other thing about Mobius that's very cool, but also a little maddening, is that it's really deep. It's extremely deep, and it's like a rabbit hole, but it's also cool because it's infinitely configurable, and not everybody has the same kind of workflow. And so it's kind of interesting to get it happening. When I first got it happening, I had 8 tracks and 4 loops, and now I have it pared down to 4 tracks with 4 loops. Now, this is interesting architecture because it means for each track, I can have 4 different loops on that track that I can bring, that I can shuttle between, while all sorts of other stuff is going on the other tracks. So this is kind of it's a headful. You know, I've been doing this since 1995, and this is as deep as I've ever gotten. And it wasn't, I got to give a shout out to my friend Daniel Thomas, who's a real computer whiz, who helped me kind of crack the code of this thing. But it is an amazing thing, and it's pretty unlimited as far as a compositional tool for ABC parts and that kind of thing. Some real cool effects like a thing known as quantize or sustain substitute or sustain replace, what it's known as. And you can think of it as a note sequencer, if you will. But what it does is it allows you to, before you create a loop, is decide how many little sections you'll chop it up into. So one section would mean the whole loop, and anything higher than that is a subdivision. So I'll use 16 for 16th notes within a measure. And so if I do a very short press of my replace or substitute function, they're only slightly different in a couple of ways, but they're basically the same thing. It will only capture new material within that little fragment. So it's like a never-ending sequencer that you can keep adding to. You can strip away because it also responds to long press, which means I could hit a long chord and hold it, and the next time it came around, there'd be the chord, and all that wild stuff would have, all of a sudden become kind of just a hold pad kind of thing. So to demonstrate this, which is easier, I was thinking about this, it's like, God, the pedal guys have got to get this. They got to get this because everybody would want it as long as they knew how to market it and make it understandable. Because when I say, oh yeah, I do this thing called quantized replacement, we're going to, like, what it is, it's just a sampling technique. And Mobius, at its core, is a really powerful sampler that can chop stuff up and multiply stuff as much as you want, and strip everything back. It can undo. You can do a lot of different overdubs, multiple ones, and you can peel all the way back to one. So It's very, very powerful in that way. So I'm going to create a blank loop here, and I'm going to play some textural stuff, but just start capturing it note by note. But you remember well, you guys are probably too young for this, but remember the coffee commercial was like, started flipping like right? So that's what it's going to be, the Folgers coffee. Okay, so I'm just going to count out loud while I create this loop. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a, okay? You see it going there, that little blue thing. And so I'm going to take a fairly deep and ambient sound with a lot of, let's say, self-oscillation or runaway feedback. As you can see it, that loop is synced to that. Swelling my volume because I'm trying to capture this woof kind of attack. There's that half speed again. So now I've got this loop kind of created. What do I want to do it? Well, it doesn't have a lot of harmonic content on purpose, but it has enough to kind of imply a key. So I am going to change loops, which are in this direction. It will copy this information to the next loop and let me play as long as I want until I kill it. Undo it or go back to the original loop. You can also do a thing called divide, which can be really cool to radically kill a loop. So I'm going to go into multiply, come out of multiply, and then I'm going to start breaking the loop down. So I started to divide, but then I undid the divide. So I now need to take it all the way down. Cool. Oh, wait. So it's like I say, it's a very deep machine, and that's probably the coolest feature on it, other than the thing that other loopers can do, which is the compositional tool thing. Because if you do want to use it like a conventional person, all that unconventionality actually has inside of it the way to do ABC forms. It's not easy, but it can be done, and I've gotten used to being able to do it so that I could say do a long form like that. Well, maybe I'll do one more here just to kind of give you a sense of this here. And let's see, where'd you go, little one? Okay. Gosh, I don't know what'll happen when I lose this thing. It'll be all over. Okay.
Shoe shine box.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. But you know, they're so soft. This one's has a little bit of something. Toothbrushes work. I know that. It's a good thing. Okay, let's see. Well, stop it.
It's upstairs pals too.
There we go. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so for this one, I'm actually changing my quantized value to 12 because I'm going for kind of a 6/8 feel. I'm going to start at half speed to create my shaker part, and then I'll get into the bulk of the tune. Probably I'm going to go to a new track so I don't mess with what I've got here. Go to the next track, maybe do a little quantize-y magic, create a little ostinato thing.